I think it's okay if I share one of the things that's going to happen right now is we're going to do this for real. We're going to actually record this conversation, and hopefully we can have the kind of discussion that merits becoming one of her podcast episodes. Exactly. And because of that, we want to make it a big deal that we're doing this at the WHEDA conference. And so occasionally I might invite you to respond, to make noise, to show your appreciation or your displeasure. And I really hope, I expect rather, that you will do so at great volume. Well done. Well done. Great. Okay. So.
Well, Elmer, if you don't mind, would you kindly start in sharing with us about why we're here today, right? Because it's not only about the great friends that we have gathered here in this room, but also possibly this will have a wider reach that other people will hear and learn. And we do hope everybody does participate and contribute. But tell us why are we here at this amazing conference today?
We are here at the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority Conference, which happens nearly every year for something like 32, 33 years, because we have a responsibility as the state's housing finance agency to convene actors from across the housing ecosystem to learn together, to think together, to network, and identify the ways that we can do what we do with even better impact. So I love telling people about WHEDA. I'm so proud of the incredible work that we've been able to do since 1972, supporting the development of 142,000 home buyers in our single family program, having supported through tax credits and other means 88,000 affordable rental units. Hold for applause. And our ability to put millions upon millions of dollars on the street to do really important work supporting housing and economic development, even though we both agree that they are inextricably tied. So if you are willing to bear with me, I will share with you the 4 things that WHEDA does. So the first thing we do is we offer mortgages to families who are low to moderate income. For us, that means under 140% AMI. Typically, our borrowers are around 80% AMI. We have a great portfolio of mortgage products and the ability to support down payment assistance. We do this through a network of partner lenders around the state who help hundreds, actually thousands of families every year live up to their dream of becoming home buyers. The second thing we do is we are the exclusive administrator of both federal and state housing tax credits. These tax credits make it profitable and possible for private developers to create or rehab housing that will be offered at restricted rents to families of certain incomes. I think it's worth noting that we are one of the states in the country that took the innovative leap of developing a state tax credit program to really amplify the results that are available because of these instruments. Third thing we do is we lend money, hundreds of millions of dollars by an incredible scrappy team in we call commercial lending that support the development, the acquisition, the rehab of those rental houses, as well as a small but mighty portfolio of economic development products. The fourth thing we do, and I'm gonna say this, we don't talk about it publicly enough. I hope after I say it, there's an uproarious applause because we're so grateful for the work for the folks that do this work. We have a compliance function. We make sure that families across the state get access to the quality of housing that they deserve by holding those operators, those owners, and all the processes accountable. We literally visit sites, we check paperwork, we do the necessary audits to make sure that the housing is equitably provided, fairly provided, and meets all of our policies. Well done.
Wow. Well, I am absolutely stunned and impressed by, first of all the work that you were able to do and your mission. And I'm wondering, and hopefully everybody's going to be okay with this, let's dive a little bit about, given all the amazing things you're doing, do you still have any problems that you're facing? Or is it like, oh, we're done, all good, no problems?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll be honest with you, it's tricky navigating how do we balance the excitement about what we're able to accomplish, keeping folks motivated to do this really amazing work in the face of, frankly, historic challenges. So we measure on the rental side the gap between what's needed and what's available at about 126,000 units. We don't even have a good number to represent the number of families who would become homeowners if there was inventory available to them. When we think about the challenge of home ownership and the starter home, or the point of entry into home ownership, it's an issue with the price of a mortgage. It's an issue with the very limited availability of for sale houses, period. And then on top of that, I don't know if you all have looked, but everything is outrageously expensive. And even if we were to survey families, it would likely not adequately represent the desire to become homeowners, because there's so many folks that have just lost hope. So if I was to conjecture a guess, in our state of roughly 6 million people, where a little more than half of the families are homeowners, I would suspect we've got hundreds of thousands more families, households that would like to actually enter homeownership.
Yeah, and what would you say is the primary, what is blocking their way?
Do you remember that guy that ran for, I think he was running for mayor of New York a couple of years ago? And he had that thing he said about the rent. Anybody remember this? The rent is just too high. And I would say right now the costs associated with buying a home are just too high. It's the price of the homes because there's so few of them. It's the interest rates have made it really difficult for families to pay that monthly cost. And, you know, in a state like Wisconsin, where 60% of our homes are more than 40 years old, it's the problem. Even if I can buy the home, I can't afford the roof that needs repair. I can't afford to make it warm and comfortable to live in. I don't know if you know this, Marina. It gets cold in Wisconsin.
It's a little bit hard to believe, because when I left New Jersey, it was colder in New Jersey. But I do hear that it does get cold here. Yeah,
we paid extra for that.
Interesting. Well, and to go back to the concept of starter home, I think it's so very interesting. And I've had many conversations with people all across the country trying to find people who are not interested in purchasing a home. And I haven't found any yet. And it's very interesting that a lot of excuses get made, and a lot of people say that, oh, you know, younger people, they don't want to own a home. I have yet to find one, and it really speaks and really relates to what you're saying, is that some people just gave up, and the hope is lost. And it's not that they wouldn't want to own a home, it's just that the opportunity is really not available for them. But the question is, I think, and I'm wondering if you have thoughts on, what is a starter home?
Well, I wanted to ask you that question. You know, you get to have this conversation with so many people, and I've listened to many of your episodes. How has your sense of what a starter home is changed? And even if you could describe what you used to think versus what you think of now.
Well, I may not be the best example of what I start out by thinking, because I came to this country as an immigrant, and I didn't have preconceived notions, right? So for me, when I arrived in this country, I was told this is the land of opportunity. And I took that very seriously to heart. And to me, being able to somehow have a relationship to land, and the more I think about it, is having a teeny little bit of possibility of owning something. That is really somehow relationship between the land and the opportunity. So I found myself on a mission, and part of the reason that I talk to all the people on my podcast is sort of to figure it out. So I've asked people, has anybody lately thought about a starter home as an acre lot with a little house and a picket fence? Not a single person wanted that. If you know anybody, please send them my way. We're going to interview them, because not a single person, younger person, older person, of different places around the country, I haven't found anybody who's looking for that. But what people are looking for is much more things that are, I would now consider a new way of thinking about luxury. And this is an interesting one. And it's not luxury the way it gets presented in real estate brochures. It's the luxury of being part of a community. It's the luxury of being, as we were just in this wonderful imagining session right before this one, it's the luxury of your child to be able to walk themselves to school. In the luxury of a mom who did not have to spend all this time in traffic, but being able to do what she wants to do and concentrate on her architecture practice, for example. Or the luxury of not being there in the morning petrified that your child, while biking to school, was run over, right? Like, that incredible luxury is what people are looking for. And so many young people that I spoke with, they said, I would love to have a townhouse next to public transportation where I would have a luxury of not owning a car, that I could get, and I know you have a walkability session coming. Those are the things that people are looking for. And we in this country, and I would love to hear if that's your situation in Wisconsin, we have practically outlawed those types of housing models that would allow somebody to do that are not legal. And this is what I'm finding, that a lot of our communities that grew around this walkable concept of community concept have been zoned out, right? Zoning has been created after these neighborhoods came to be, and they just became illegal. And I, for example, live in a neighborhood where every single property is non-conforming to the zoning. So all of us are effectively illegal, which makes you wonder. It's one of the best loved communities in our town. It's the most walkable. Why are we illegal? This is insane. So I think for me to sort of start our home is a way to kind of start on your path towards this land of opportunity. And it doesn't by any means need to be a single family home. And I've been trying to find what other ways one could start this home ownership. And one of the amazing things that I learned today at this conference, at lunch, I was sitting next to a wonderful developer here in Wisconsin, and she was sharing information about a program actually in Atlanta, Georgia. So here I flew from New Jersey to a conference in Wisconsin to learn about something that's happening in Georgia, which is absolutely amazing, where the opportunities are provided for people who are renters to invest in the properties that they are living in, and how for them to start building equity, start building their down payment effectively, and start feeling like owners. I've been looking for this program for so long. I'm definitely interviewing these people on the podcast, so stay tuned, hopefully. But it really sort of, if we start thinking about starter homes in that way, where do you start? That's really all there is.
So many thoughts about this. I think I wish we could think of starter homes as point of entry homes and transition the language from start, which to me too strongly embeds the idea that you're supposed to leave it, to trade up and trade up and trade again. I would love for us to really attack the problem of how to give people point of entry homes, point of entry into home ownership. That would do a couple of things. It might shift what kind of structures we associate with people's first homes, because I am actually less interested in the structure, the building that should be called a starter home, than I am in building pathways for people to become homeowners. So as it turns out, in 2002, I moved from New York City to Maine. In 2005 or 2006, my wife and I had the incredible privilege of buying a home. So picture this, in New York, I had a massive 600 square foot, two-bedroom apartment, right? Is in the neighborhood called Bushwick now, right? Bushwick, when I lived there, was not cool. It is very cool now. 3 years later, roughly, I bought, my then girlfriend, now wife, and I bought a 2,500 square foot, 4-bedroom house on 2.5 acres with a barn. The idea that minutes before I lived in 600 square feet, I didn't need that much space, but this house was the point of entry house, which made sense for where I was. And we could afford it because it was built in 1835. And when the wind blew, you
could
felt
see it.
Literally, snow would. So I think there's a lot of folks like us that would love to have the house with the picket fence and all that if we could afford it. I think there's a lot of folks that would love to buy a 600 square foot, 1 or 2 bedroom in the middle of a city if we could afford it. So let's make it a point of entry home. And if a household decides to, I'm not even going to say upgrade, I'm going to say transition to something different, whether it's larger home, more bedrooms, different amenities, and so on. That's their prerogative, because I think, frankly, prerogative is one of the most important values of homeownership. It is the ability to paint the inside of the house whatever color you want. It is the ability to decide that I want to have a checkered floor and so on. It's more than it really should be, in my opinion, more than the production of equity. It should be about the autonomy to make it the home that you want.
Yeah, and I think what's so interesting it's the way that we think about building homes now, which is different from, I feel like, how we were doing it in the past, is we tend to build homes that are meant to be done. And I think this is a very interesting thing that I've discovered, that what you're saying, that it's an opportunity to change. It's an opportunity to evolve where you are. It's an ability to add an extra story, or, put a koi pond in the back, or, like this one wonderful gentleman said, all I really want is a townhouse that I could own so I can have a koi pond. I'm like, you know what? That is
then good on you.
Right. If that's your dream, absolutely. But what we tend to build is, we build these communities that are meant to be done. And when they're sort of fixed in amber, and when people buy into them, they start protecting this mysterious neighborhood character, right? And that is an interesting concept that I don't think would have been realistic prior to our current single family overwhelming zoning situation, where people say, well, I bought into this community, I love it, and I totally understand this is very important to you, you have a lot of feelings, but the expectations that nothing will change are very, very interesting.
You know,
I don't know if you see this.
Well, it's hard for me to think about how we got here without acknowledging the highly effective structuring of racism. You know, we can't not call out that aspect.
Yep.
The reality of zoning is whether people were trying to, whether people had in their mind's eye a specific other or not, it was the systems and the structures of racism that often motivated people to build policies and to make zoning designations to keep other people out. Mm-hmm. So the other people might have nominally been described as from the other side of town. They might have been folks who can't afford to live here, or they might be folks who pray at different places and so on. But it was some version of an ism. Often in our country, it was about the really perfect design of racism. I want to believe we're in a better place, and we can call out that if the origins of these policies were motivated by such terrible thinking, we should allow ourselves to really question them. And we should not hold so tightly onto these old ideas. Now, we're a generation or two, sometimes three removed from it. But it doesn't mean we have to hold sacred bad ideas. And so we should question those things. I think part of the fun is inviting people to reimagine what's good and what's productive. It's exciting to think of, one thing that I think is very cool is buildings that were built for a certain thing becoming a different thing. That's a great example of how if instead of saying, hey, what should we do, you constrict the possibilities and it breeds more creativity. So there's people that are in this room right now that have redeveloped schools into senior housing or even family housing. Mm-hmm. Why aren't we thinking about taking, old factories and making them condos that people can buy? Because I think too often in our imaginations we have starter homes equals postage stamp with a house and a garage, and it has to be, I have to count, 8 walls, right? Insides and outsides, ceiling and floor, so that's 10. We should say, well, let's abandon everything we know and try to answer the question of what should we do to give people a point of entry into home ownership? Let's talk about the value of home ownership and why we want to support it. People that own homes, they have the autonomy to make some of the decisions they would love to make, to choose how it feels and what it looks like. There is the production of wealth and equity. There is also the production of care and thoughtfulness about everything around them. We all know that people, neighborhoods where there's home ownership, they tend to look nicer. They tend to feel better. They invite and attract amenities. Let's make the instrument of change about creating homeownership, not singularly little cookie cutter houses as an only way to make that a possibility.
Yeah, and I think what you're touching on, especially with reimagining places, is where is innovation? Where is room for innovation in everything that we're doing? And I think we often forget that we are a country of innovators. At least I
Absolutely.
think of us, right? So where do we allow room for innovation, and why was the innovation so stagnant in this housing world, right? You know, as we start thinking, like, why do we generate cookie cutter projects, right? What is it? And I think it goes back to your point that when we not question the rules of the game, when we're just like, well, these are the zoning requirements and this is what we're doing, right? Single family home is what allowed and this is what we're doing. But back to your point, well, why was the single family zoning introduced over here, right? In my neighborhood where I live, it's a historically very working class, multiracial neighborhood. And it was specifically lot sizes were made larger and house houses were required to be larger, literally like you're saying, so that people in that neighborhood will eventually be somehow, I don't know where we were supposed to go, somewhere, right? Right? So that is the whole point. But if we stop and think about it, well, there's nothing set in stone about that regulation. It's just words on a piece of paper. We can change it, right? We have the power. We have the technology. But what would that all of a sudden do? The amount of innovation and opportunity that reimagine our environment, reimagine what a starter home is. All of a sudden you're like, oh, that old, a location where we have a hairdresser shop or a candy shop on the first floor with something above, or the other day we had a bike shop with something above, that are being reimagined, right, reconsidered. All of a sudden, people will think of ideas that when somebody's sitting there in a room trying to make regulations, we'll never think of, right? So it's that agency of ownership, agency over your environment, ability to grow and develop. That's where I am so excited to look towards those opportunities. And that's really the ownership. Really also taking ownership of your neighborhood is, I want to reimagine this. I want to bring different things here. I want to have small units over stores where, exactly like you're saying, people who, for example, laundromats were not allowed, right, for racial reasons, because we were trying to keep people out, right? And well, if we stop and we research and we understand that's why that zoning exists, we're like, well, nothing's stopping us from changing it. Let's cross that out of our zoning code and start over.
I wish there was a word that combined innovation and audacity. So in 2023, my boss, the governor of Wisconsin, Tony Evers, signed into law a historic legislation. It gave us, quote unquote, $525 million to invest in housing across the state in 4 different products. One of those products, for instance, supported the redevelopment and the improvement of housing above those commercial spaces. In main streets across the state, there are these 100-year-old buildings that had a general store or what have you, and above them was either storage or housing. And for years, many of them have just laid fallow. And so the governor and some others got both innovative and audacious and said, hey, let's reinvest. These are existing places. What if we did the wild thing of investing in the really great decisions we made 100 years ago? I think what we need is more innovation, but also some audacity to do the things that we know can work for the right reasons, to call out the things that don't work. I love thinking of examples even inside of our organization where when reviewing processes, we have identified things that didn't really make sense. And so we remove them. Just in the last year, we stopped charging fees for folks that paid over the phone. Now, 10 years ago, I'm gonna be nice and say 10 years ago. Debit cards were a little less popular, the electronic payments were a little less popular, and it was a pain in the butt to deal with someone calling in to pay for something. Well, and so we had a fee associated with it. And we just happened to not think to look at it for roughly 10 years. And the reason we were able to identify it is because we had new people come in who didn't know to not call out the things that we were doing wrong. So there's some audacity there to sort of raise the flag of like, hey, why are we doing this? To the market, to our borrowers, to our partners, it might feel like innovation, but it was the combination of innovation and audacity. And that's a single example, maybe that's two examples that I would love to see replicated everywhere. We know this morning we heard from Dr. Medipana, who is associated with the University of Michigan and the Housing Equity for Health Solutions Center, where she is the director, and their work is connecting the social determinants of health with housing. And it's a circular relationship. It's housing as a way to affect health, and thinking about health as a way to think through housing. Part of what I think would allow us to re-energize the development of starter homes is if we counted different wins. So right now we know that the market doesn't allow for certain incomes to enter into home ownership without a lot of support. And so we're doing everything we can to support that. But what if we also counted the health savings and the economic development as the returns on the investments in down payment assistance and reduced rate products and mortgage products that are designed for people with credit disqualifying events like WHEDA is piloting currently? What if we counted all these other things and use those as justifications for investing in more housing that allows people to enter into homeownership?
Yeah, I can't stress enough of how important it is that the hidden costs of housing instability are there's no quantifying it, right? So the morning session was absolutely amazing to bring to our attention is how much health benefit one could have from stable housing. But health is probably the most important one, but there are so many other things that could be counted as benefits, so I wouldn't even stop there. Like the obvious one to me is education, right? If you were to look at a child, and this morning we talked about a child who is stably housed, how much healthier they are. But educational outcomes for that same child, I had an amazing guest on my podcast it was an incredible story. So I in my day job, I happen to be an architect, so I work on a lot of projects, and a lot of the pushback we get is, oh my goodness, they're gonna be overcrowding in schools if you build more homes, right? We get that all the time. Anybody get that? Everybody gets that, right? So I've been trying to find research, and one of the people has done a lot of work on documenting that this is just not true, right? And he's an educational researcher, does all this amazing research. Check him out, Richard Kallenberg. And I have been following his work, and all of a sudden he comes out with a book on housing. I was stunned. I was like, why would an educational researcher write a book on housing? So I reached out to him. I got brave enough, and I reached out to him, and he said, I have been doing this educational work for years, and I've been quoting his data at my planning board hearings, right? And he realized that we need to fix housing in order to get the educational outcomes that we want. And he said, I've been advocating every single other policy. I have already tried researching. But at the end of the day, we're not going to get there until we address the housing issue. So if we then think about an additional benefit, to your point, that I can't even imagine, how do we calculate the impact on a child's life and their future earnings from being in a stable home, from being located in a school where provides them an education that sets them for a life of success. If you factor that as the return on the investment, I mean, it's going to be the best return on investment ever, right? How do you even quantify that? Amazing.
So, for the last year, I've had this thing. Amen. I've been saying to folks, it's really hard to articulate what feels so obvious. And if you don't understand that, what do I need to tell you so that you can, or are you intentionally rejecting it? So I have to ask you, you get to talk to people from around the country, from a broad spectrum of practices. Wisconsin is unique, but our problems are not distinct. We have aging housing stock. We have an aging population. We have the most beautiful scenery. We are a climate haven. We have a population that will be growing much more rapidly very soon. We have really limited supply of available housing that is also accessible to people physically. The dispersion of it is not exactly perfect for where the jobs and opportunity are. So, having said all that, we are unique, but we are absolutely not distinct, and you've heard that from your podcast interviewees in other places. What have you heard that we need to make sure that we know about?
Well, I think that that's a very, very deep question. And I completely agree with you that we think that our problems are unique, but they really are not, right? And once we start understanding that, it becomes much more important to talk to other people in other places and learn from each other. But I also think that, I guess what I would start by kind of, the solutions that I would see are twofold, is one, meeting people where they are and understanding what is blocking the creation of new housing. I think that we are all in agreement that more housing needs to be created, right? But a lot of the times, somebody sitting somewhere with best intentions thinks that they know what the solution is. And, the laws that come out. However, I would say that it would be much more important to understand where people are starting from and what would be the next incremental step you can do that would work in that circumstance. And oftentimes that next step, it may be the same for everybody, but you kind of need to understand where you're starting from, right? If the entire community is full of single-family homes, the next step will probably be allowing accessory dwelling units, right, for example. And then in a little while, see how comfortable people are and see if you could get a group together and see what would be the next incremental step. There's another amazing organization called Strong Towns. That's sort of their approach of understanding where people are coming from, getting together, stating what is the problem that we're facing, and what would be one step that we could do to sort of try to get us there. And the other one, which I feel that, and I don't know, maybe this is harder or easier, but kind of shifting the conversation. I talk to a lot of people in community meetings who, this is a kind of an emotional change that we need to do, is how do we switch from somebody should do something about it, this attitude, right? The government needs to do something about it. The mayor, the whoever, right? There's some mysterious somebody that needs to do something about it. And if we're able to look in the mirror and say, well, what can I do about it, right? And what is it that I could do myself? And it becomes, and I've tried to ask this at, public hearings, when you're speaking up, don't say, who should do this? They should do this. No, I am going to do this. And
Can I add to that?
oh, by all
This
means.
is at the risk of disagreeing. I believe to my core that it's not an I, it's a we.
Oh, I'm good with that.
And even better, I would love to reveal to you and to introduce you to the we that's going to do it.
Woohoo! Go team!
So if ever I've never heard a better justification for this very convening. In this room, we have architects and planners and legislators and contractors and service providers and developers, financiers and thinkers and artists and designers. Who am I forgetting?
Advocates?
And advocates, actually. Advocates. And actually, we have advocates and organizers and protesters. We've got everyone. And I would love to accept the challenge that the folks that agreed to come to this conference this year, last year, and next year, and every year are essentially volunteering themselves to be that we. And they're coming to have the conversations and to equip themselves with the social capital in the form of relationships, with the technical experience and the technical capital in the form of learning, and the imagination capital, which is a little bit innovation and a lot of it audacity, as we heard in the prior session. It's our goal that every year when we convene this conversation, we hear at least a couple of stories about something that happened because of the magic of the year prior. And I know I could definitely tell you about some friendships. I can tell you about some projects where developers and contractors met, or developer and a developer met. We are instrumenting a session. We're instrumenting a practice at one of our sessions. We're going to invite the municipalities or the communities that have available land for development to make themselves obvious by wearing a bright day glow vest.
This is so much fun.
Right? And the goal and the intention is that folks that are looking for places to develop or ideas about what to develop should be attracted to them like moths to a flame. I love the idea that one of the most profound actions is transitioning from that who should to we will. And I'm excited to introduce you to the we that will.
I am so inspired, and I'm definitely interested in talking to all the brave people who are going to put on that yellow vest. But I also think that another thing that we need to allow ourselves to do is, I don't know how to phrase this properly, give ourselves permission to fail sometimes.
Oof.
Because it is so scary, right? To go out there and do things. And the part of the we, I think, is so helpful to be among people who are not going to laugh at you and point fingers at you, but say, look, We tried, this didn't work, we're gonna try again, right? Because the only way we're gonna fail is if we don't try. And I can't tell you how many tries I've proposed projects and, and the town say, no. Oh, and the neighborhood would, turn their nose on. I'm like, no, that's not good enough, right? And what do? You go home, and when you, and I'm sure many people in this room had this experience, you're putting yourself out there, right? Your work is being criticized like crazy. Everybody's poo-pooing your project, right, in the newspaper, and so is mad. Like, how do you handle that? And having this incredible community of people around you, I think what you're doing here today is bringing people who could support you and say, look, okay, this didn't happen. It was just this project that didn't work out, or this proposal, this didn't work out. It's not like you're a terrible person or something wrong with you, right? You just, you have to kind of like go to the bathroom, wash your face, and say like, okay, let's just get up and try again. Because what else are you gonna do?
So
right?
I'll give you a fun example. It's appropriate because of where we are. We are in this incredible Frank Lloyd Wright design space in Milwaukee, on the south side of Milwaukee, on Burnham Street. There is a development of single-family homes, standalone homes, that were a project from Frank Lloyd Wright's studio, and there's 4 of them on the south side of Milwaukee. And if you're driving, you might drive right by them and not even know that they're there, not even recognize that you're in this historic site. And these homes were a pilot for flat pack homes that were very available to working class families. The project was a failure. And I can tell you they're a failure because if it had succeeded, you all would be living in a Frank Lloyd Wright designed home. That failure resulted in these 4 homes on the south side of Milwaukee that are a now international destination for people to see Frank Lloyd Wright designed homes in the middle of a residential neighborhood. The street traffic, the organizations that have bought these and restored them are economic generators. It changed that neighborhood. So the massive failure of this project to scale was just that, but it succeeded in doing something else that was catalytic in other ways. So we invite failure, and I hope we can see more audacity and more risk taking from folks. Now, I have to have a disclaimer. A lot of what we do as WHEDA is financing and administrating tax credits, and we don't like to see failure there. But we do like to see innovation.
But I think I think this is a really valid point, and I think that I would say that we could create kind of levels of where we're able to tolerate risk and failure, and at what point we're like, well, not really, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that, and I feel that's the place for the experimentation. So right now, throughout the country, the distinction between where you could take risks and try, I feel, is basically single family home. When you're doing a single family home, you're allowed to take risks. You're allowed to try different things, no need to worry about it. In some areas of the country, like in California, for example, or in Oregon, you're allowed to try different things when you're having a single-family home and accessory dwelling unit. Everything else above that is highly regulated, no experimentation allowed. Everything has to be reviewed by multiple boards, notifications, very, very strict regulations, right? What if we shift that border or that level of where that experimentation and risk is allowed a little bit higher? just a little bit. And I think that's where every place could decide what is their level of comfort. Going back to that, you kind of need to meet people where they are and see if we could just a little bit increase that risk-taking zone of opportunity, right? Because I'm with you, like, I'm not sure what people with the low-income housing tax credits for, 200-unit building doing a lot of experimenting and crazy stuff and failing.
Oh, this is so
Maybe
self-serving.
not, I don't know, but
So
let's hear it. Let's hear it.
So two things. One, the way we're going to solve this crisis is innovation. And one of the things that we're designing right now, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for announcing this before it goes public, but
don't tell
an innovative set-aside. And we are really going to encourage in the QAP, in the tax credit program, a set-aside to prove what's doable. And so, I'm noting the time, so I'm going to finish with this. We are designing a program that will invite innovation, that will change the typical limitations that we put on our tax credit applications. And we are excited to see folks bring innovation and audacity to meet the needs of people across the state. This is our invitation to partner with you. This is our invitation for you to do what might not work under any other circumstances but this set aside. It is a tool for us to learn, and we're going to help scale what we can learn so that it can affect folks across the state for the advancement of affordable rental housing and housing that will allow people to become homeowners. And where are you going to build these things? You're going to build them on the sites offered by the folks wearing yellow vests upstairs as we transition to the networking reception right now. So, not to have a hard stop, but thank you so much, Marina, for this conversation. We're going to do a week. If you haven't already, please sign John Yernerdle's card. We'll see you upstairs. There's going to be a DJ and drinks and snacks and all that stuff. And we'll start again bright and early tomorrow morning. Thank you all so much.